Hi everybody, it's Catherine here with Adopt for Life for this week's snack chat and keeping on track. I do apologize because we've been having a lot of tech issues, so I'm actually coming to you live from my phone, and I am very hoping that Valerie is able to come on because we do have a lot of questions. This week we are covering prep for the holidays, so these are all of the questions that you guys have brought in about how to prepare yourself and your families for the holidays. So I'm going to go ahead and start asking the few questions. I've never gone live directly on Facebook, so this is new for me, everybody. I'm going to start asking by the first question, and hopefully I will be able to get Valerie. I think there's some sort of trick to it that I clearly don't know about. So Val, sorry if you're here, I can't see you. Okay, so the first question that we got is, my kids need their routine. How can I keep it in place, but still let them just be kids? Oh, Valerie, you are watching. So how do I ask you to join with me? Val, I don't know how to do this, so if you can just post the questions maybe, and I will, I'll just do this live like this. Before we get into some of the questions that we ask for everybody, I do want to let you know that we try to adhere with confidentiality and safety. So if you are asking your questions, please feel free to drop it down below. But just be mindful of the language that you're using, details, first names. We don't want to provide any information about our children's identities, just to keep them safe. So again, I apologize. This is a very different format, but our computers weren't working. So Val, I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question. My kids need their routine. How can I keep it in place, but still let them just be kids and do special things like parties and go to meet Santa? So to be quite honest with this one, it's all about balance, and it's all about knowing our children. So for some kids, they're fine with routine being off and things changing, but for other children, perhaps like mine, they have a really hard time with change of routine. So I think it's about knowing your children's triggers, knowing your own personal triggers, and trying to find that balance in between. So maybe that means you go to a few parties, or you get pictures with Santa, or you go to whatever event it is, but you don't go as much, or you don't stay as long, or you go to a sensory Santa, so a Santa that doesn't have the bright lights so that your children aren't triggered. So I think a lot of that is just finding balance and giving yourself grace and knowing that it's not going to be perfect, and managing your expectations on how your children are going to respond and react, because it's an exciting time, but it's also very stressful and potentially very triggering for our children. So let's try and manage our own expectations on our children, but also for ourselves. So the next question is, how do we mark the holidays? Excuse me, I've been fighting a cold. How do we mark the holidays with loved ones from our children's past? That can be a difficult one for a lot of families. So in that case, I do really suggest for families to talk to your children about how they celebrate. So especially if they're older children, you want to be able to celebrate the way that they're used to. Maybe they open gifts on Christmas Eve. Maybe they go to church or go to synagogue, or maybe they, used to drive around looking at Christmas lights. Whatever they did in their first home and with their birth families, we want to honor and respect that, but also do both. So if your children are old enough to talk to you and to tell you, you want to be able to have that conversation and say, how do you guys celebrate? How did you celebrate, the holidays? And be able to incorporate that with your own, but also be able to share with them some of the holidays that you do as well, and some of the traditions that your family has. Would it be triggering to see their old foster family before the holidays, or would it help them so they feel that they haven't lost them? That's a tough one, and there isn't a one solution, one answer for that. So for some children, it's a great thing to say. It's a great thing to do. It's a great thing to have their foster families, especially if they were in their placement for a very long time. Absolutely, you want to include them. Also, some children can be triggered by it as well. So I think that it'll be important that you talk with your children about it and you see how they're feeling and ask them. And again, maybe that just means it's a short visit, or maybe that means, you go in to do an activity so that there's not too many expectations on, and you leave. So I think that it's definitely important to have that conversation. You don't want to just make any assumptions for your children or for your children's foster family, especially if they have a really close tie. So absolutely consider it. And you want to be able to, respect where they're coming from, and know that sometimes our own expectations and our own fears as adoptive parents can get in the way. So that's just a very blunt answer. So I'm going to try to add Val again. Tap the profile picture. Tap the profile picture of the person you want to invite on the top right. I don't know what I'm doing here, Val. We're just going to go. We're going to keep going. We're going to plow through this because I'm not that tech savvy when it comes to Facebook Lives. My kids get overstimulated by too much stuff and by loud toys, but my family always gives us tons of gifts. How do I manage that? That's a tough one. And I think that the most important thing is that you are being honest with your family, and that you are having these conversations ahead of times. And so I think a lot of times that can mean actually sitting down and letting them know that I appreciate this is how you're showing love to the kids, and we love that, but this is how it affects them afterwards. And sometimes you have to be a bit of that advocate, and it doesn't always mean that it's going to be a beautiful, great conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to be done. And if in your culture or in your background giving lots of gifts is just, it is what it is, maybe trying to stage it out a little bit. So in my house, on Christmas morning, my parents come in the morning when they're unwrapping gifts from Santa and parents, and they get their gifts from my parents then, because then we have a big family dinner afterwards, and it becomes complete chaos and my kids become completely overwhelmed. So things are staggered a little bit, and my parents have learned, and my family has learned what works and what doesn't. So I think you need to be open to have those conversations. You need to be honest about your children's needs, and make sure that you're putting their best interest first. I'm an awaiting parent, and I thought that I would be matched by now, so I'm not looking forward to the holidays. Do you have any tips for feeling better? That's a big one. That's one that I remembered a lot. As an awaiting parent, I would always say, well, this is the last Christmas without kids, or this is the last, and then it wasn't, and then the next holiday came and I became overwhelming. Absolutely, you can experience depression and anxiety waiting for your children. Those are real things that a lot of families deal with. So giving yourself some grace is important. Knowing where your personal boundaries are. So a great example is maybe you were invited to kids cookie get together where the kids get together and decorate cookies. You can say no. You can say no to these things for your own mental health, as well as making sure that you have support by a community that gets it. So here at Adopt for Life, we have thousands of families that get it. We're living it. And so if you need to jump on one of our private groups and just check in and write and get validation and support from other families, you can absolutely reach out to a regional parent liaison. We're here to support you through this because, trust me, we have all been there. And just setting up your boundaries has been a very key factor for my personal waiting journey, for sure. What about all the questions from relatives about why we're not pregnant yet? No one should be asking you that. No one should be asking you that. But I respect that it happens. I think you need to appreciate the relationship you have with that person. So maybe it's an older relative who just doesn't understand. Maybe people don't know that you're adopting. Maybe you are on an infertility journey and no one actually knows. And so I think prepping yourself ahead of time with some keywords that shuts it down. So it'll happen when it happens. Deep breaths. Exactly. Take some deep breaths. It'll happen when it happens, or we're looking into our options, or, I mean, if you're faith-based, it's in God's hands, or if you're not faith-based, saying, you know what, whoever it is, we're having struggles in that area. It's a tricky one, and for me, my first reaction is anger, because no one should be asking that question. No one knows what someone is going through, but having yourself prepared with a kind of one sentence of it'll happen when it happens, or we're looking into our options, or maybe it is time for you to share because it's a close family member, of saying, well, we actually are going through infertility treatments. Yeah, shut up and eat your turkey, Uncle Jim. That's exactly what I wanted to say. And I mean, sometimes, if the person is well-meaning, you can share with them. Families come in different ways and it's not easy for everybody. Or you can just have a one-liner saying, it's none of your business. We're working on it. That kind of stuff. But yeah, if someone asks you more than once, I would be having a real conversation with that person. Because that isn't an appropriate question to ask anybody. Okay, it's our first holidays with our children since placement. That's exciting. What should we expect? It's hard to kind of share with you what to expect, because again, every child is different and everyone comes from different walks of life. I will never forget the first Christmas we had when my older two were home. My whole family was so excited that we gave them so many gifts that by 2:00 we had to take a break. So just expect excitement from everybody. And if they were placed recently, knowing some boundaries and maybe not allowing family members to get too close and say, I'm your grandma. You need to be able to put those boundaries up. If they're literally only been placed for a couple months and they're still trying to get used to you as mom and dad, or as a parent, then absolutely you want to try and manage that and check in with the kids. And although they may not be able to speak, their body language will tell you. So there's no real way to prep for this. I'll be honest with you. It is what it is, and it's not everyone's going to be excited. So I think just managing your own expectations and knowing when it's time to leave. We had festivities at our house the first year just because we wanted the kids to be in their comfort zone. And we had the conversation with our family ahead of time saying, only mom will feed the kids, only myself will feed the kids. These are the things that have been really important for us in creating that bond. So you don't want to have the holidays come and then all the work that you had towards attachment and bonding just thrown out the window because it's the holidays. So just be prepared for some triggers, be prepared for some meltdowns, be prepared for some potential hard conversations. If the children are older, they might want to talk about their children. They might want to talk about what it used to be in the past, which could be positive or not. And a great point that Val is just saying as well is body language, and talk to your parents ahead of time that they don't need to hug new relatives, and don't expect the hugs and the kiss. So how do we set expectations with relatives then? it honestly has to be blunt and obvious conversations. So you need to call up your family or whoever it is that you're meeting with your friends and let them know, like, this is the boundaries. So I'm asking you to please not feed the child. If they come to you with a bottle or with food, redirect them to me, refer to me as mom the whole time. Please don't try and pick them up. If there's past abuse or neglect, you don't want to share that child's story, but you want to let them know that the child might react this way, and this is how we're doing it as a family. So if a child has a tantrum and you're doing attachment parenting, don't expect my child to be going in timeouts, because we don't do that in our house. Or if you want to do different expectations, it's about having those blunt conversations. Yes, they can be awkward. Yes, they aren't always great conversations, but they need to be said. So I think that most families are just very excited about having a new family member. So absolutely share with them what your boundaries are and letting them know that your child is taking the lead. So maybe you won't be staying for 5 hours for Christmas dinner or for the holidays. You'll do a shorter period, or maybe you'll come after dinner to manage that. So take your child's lead and don't be afraid to speak up. Yes, teach boundaries and consent for older relatives. Yes. And photos. So depending on where you are in the process, photos are not appropriate. They're not safe. You aren't able to take photos. So if you're in a foster to adopt situation, or if the child is on AP, like, having a million photos and posting them on social media is not an appropriate thing. Talk about that, as well as it can be really overwhelming for children who coming in and they're like, pose with your new cousin, pose with your aunt, pose with grandma. Like, it can be a lot. So just make sure that you're managing that all. And it's really important that you're including all of your children. So a question, did anybody see the scene in This Is Us where grandma wanted a photo of just the bio children? Yeah, that wouldn't be happening in my house. Thankfully, that hasn't happened in my house, but you need to talk about these things ahead of time, because we make assumptions and we don't want to put our children in a place of being hurt, or us ourselves as being hurt as well. We don't believe in doing Santa, but our children have always done it in the past, and we feel that they've lost enough this past year since placement. Should we continue on with the traditions even though we don't want to lie to our children? That's a tough one. I think that it's important to respect where your children are coming from, and a lot of times, not just with the holidays, but in general, it's about amalgamating your two lives. So what did they do in the past? What are our traditions, and how do we celebrate, and how can we amalgamate that? So maybe in your household, Santa doesn't come down the chimney, but you can get gifts from Santa. If the children are old enough, you want to be able to have that conversation. Loss is a huge one. For us, loss is a huge one, and grief is a huge one around the holidays. So perhaps for the first one, you can celebrate with their traditions, and with Santa. In the next one, you can start talking about it a bit more. It really depends on the children. I absolutely respect that they've lost enough since placement and since moving in with you. So maybe it's about having a conversation and getting that support and knowing how can you celebrate Santa and the holidays in your home where you're comfortable, but that you feel like your children's past and their traditions and their values are still respected. So if they are younger children, they may not always know the difference anyways, but if they are a bit older, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, I would definitely be very mindful about what you're stopping and starting in their lives given their past. So maybe just make a little change with them. So instead of Santa doing this, we're going to do it this way. So that Santa still comes, but he comes in this way. And then as you grow and develop that bond and relationship with them, you can speak to them about your thoughts and wishes and feelings about the holidays and Santa. It's not easy. And unfortunately, there isn't a one-stop shop answer for this. It's going to really depend on the children, really depend on their age, and really depend on your belief system as well. How do we create traditions that are meaningful to our kids? What I have found in our house is that having traditions that are amalgamation of our children's first family, but also our traditions and our cultural traditions has been the best way. So as we developed our relationship with their first families and with their foster families, we learned how they celebrated the holidays, and we incorporated some of that. And so again, if you're coming from a transcultural or an interracial adoption, you want to be mindful of how they celebrate, and you don't want anyone feeling left out or different because they may be celebrating different. So really sit down, talk to their first family if at all possible, and find out. And if you can't speak with the first family, culturally, how do families celebrate who come from a specific culture, and be able to do it from there. So it's about blending it and finding a new tradition. And yes, it can be hard, especially if you have strong beliefs or strong background. It can be hard, but this is about new, and it's about growing together as a family. So I think it's really important to be able to support one another and grow into the new family traditions. How do we get ready for back to school towards the end of the holidays? I have yet to accomplish this perfectly. But what absolutely has helped is getting back into that routine. So sometimes during the break, we get a little bit lax on bedtimes, and we, they get a little more sugar than usual, and they get a little more treats, and they're completely overstimulated from all the toys that they're receiving. Get back into the routine of things. In our family, we actually make their lunches back in their lunchbox. And so we use like bento boxes. So we give them their lunches back in their bento box. We wake them up at the same time for school. We start having the same routine of okay, gotta get up, breakfast, dressed, whereas in the holidays, we usually spend 90% of our time in our PJs. So get back into the routine and have those conversations again. So you want to be able to have those conversations, let them know school's coming up. Here are the expectations. This is what we're going to do. Don't forget the bus is going to be coming at this time again. And just really start having those conversations. And we do dry runs. So we get our snow pants on and everything on as if we're heading out the door, and that really helps. Other children, I've heard that actually can trigger anxiety. So absolutely know your children, know what works for you and for them, but really try and get them back into the routine will be your best step forward. My kids tend to have meltdowns after special or good things, and we're worried it's going to ruin the celebration over the holidays. How can we handle that? Yeah. We have a lot of expectations that we put on our children, and it's very hard, especially for children who have developmental trauma or maybe have special needs or are dealing with grief and loss. They're going to react differently than perhaps other children or family members in your home. How do you handle this is really managing your own expectations. Understand that it's going to happen. Appreciate that children are going to be overwhelmed, and a meltdown might just be crying. It might be physical. It might be food hoarding. You don't know what a meltdown is going to look like, but I think you need to be able to manage your own expectations and prep your family, and never feel embarrassed about your child trying to navigate this world, because they've had different life experiences than other children in your family. So maybe that means doing a little prep ahead of time and changing the environment a little bit. So if you're going to someone's house, trying to find a quiet place for them to sit down. So if you feel that they're starting to spin a little bit, take a break in the other room. I mean, sometimes we even use iPads because it gets them calm and focused. Do what works for your family, but absolutely manage your own expectations and appreciate that this is very hard for a lot of children, and especially children who are dealing with loss and grief over the holidays. Is it a bad idea to travel and stay with extended family over the holidays? I mean, for that, it honestly really depends, again, on the family. If your children were just placed with you and you're still trying to figure out a routine and develop the attachment and bonding, it may not be the best idea. But, I mean, it might be okay. It really depends on the children. Absolutely get their opinions on it. Absolutely get their thoughts. They might be excited about it. If you are going to a relative's house and sleeping over, having comfort items for your children, transition items are important. So for us, we bring our own blankets because it smells the way that they're used to. It smells like our house, and it's not scratchy. So they're and how they celebrated it, and again amalgamating that. So maybe they go to synagogue on Christmas night, and then you go to church on Christmas Day. I mean, it just really depends on how the traditions are. If they're coming from a different background, you want to be able to am I back on? Okay. You want to be able to really respect where they're coming from and showing respect for what your new family traditions, and maybe that just means things are going to look a little bit different. Should I be buying gifts for bio siblings and parents who we have openness with? That is a tricky one. So that's a conversation that you need to have ahead of time. There's a family I was speaking to earlier this week that they were worried as well that they were worried that their children's birth family was going to give a gift to one child and not the other. You need to just talk about it, and that's honestly what it comes down to, and talking about that, and you don't want to put anyone in a position to feel that they need to give gifts if maybe they're not financially in a position to. So maybe just writing a card, decorating a craft for them, but talk about it and make sure that everybody's on the same page and comfortable about it, because it's very important. Catherine, I happen to know you do holidays well. Do I? Tell us about some of the traditions that your family loves most to do. That's a good question. That I can answer well. So in our home, we have a child with very complex special needs. So leaving the house is very difficult for us. It's hard for us to travel as a full family. It's hard for us to get to family activities. So we do a lot of things at home. First thing is we try and host as much as we can because it keeps our eldest daughter safe and in her comfort zone. This year we're having the children's birth brother coming up for a few days. So that's very exciting for us and for the kids. Some of the traditions that we do. Number one tradition that I love to do is the Christmas pickle. Sorry, my cold's getting the best of me. So I don't know if you guys do the Christmas pickle, but in our home, we have the Christmas pickle that on Christmas Day, all the kids run downstairs, and because we have 3, there's always fights about who's opening the Christmas gifts first, because that's, big deal here. So they have to find the baby Christmas pickle. So there's 3 sizes pickles. It's an ornament, like a glass ornament, and whoever finds the baby Christmas pickle gets to open their gift first. So that's one of the traditions that we love doing. We also don't have a chimney, so we put sparkle dust on our walkway so that the reindeer can find our house, and we have a Christmas key that we put outside our door so that Santa can get in, which has been helpful because now there's questions about how does Santa come if you don't have a chimney. When is Adopt for Life closed over the holidays? And what do I do if we're struggling and need support? So Adopt for Life, we adhere to statutory holidays just like everybody else. So we will be closed on December 25th and 26th, as well as January 1st. But we are here to support you. So if you're struggling and you need that support, reach out to us and we will find you. We definitely are not a crisis supports, but we've realized that we support families who go to crisis. And we know what that looks like. So absolutely continue to reach out to us, reach out to the community, reach out to your regional parent liaison. If you don't know who that is, that's fine. Just come and find us, post on the group. You can always email us at info@adoptforlife.com, and we'll make sure that you're guided and supported throughout the whole thing, because Adopt for Life is here throughout your entire journeys. And although the holidays are coming up, it doesn't mean that we're stopping our support to families. So continue to reach out to us, and we're here, we're in this together. And I think that's the greatest thing about this organization, is that we really want to support you alongside with you, not just help you. We're doing this journey with you. If my kids are if my kids are triggered during the holidays, can we make our special family memories at a time that is more of a clean slate? Absolutely. There's no rules for this. There's no rules for the holidays. And although, yes, typically you have the traditional turkey dinner and this and that, you can do whatever you want to do. Some children that I've supported were apprehended around Christmas, and they hate Christmas or the holidays or whatever it is that you celebrate, but they hate it. And so their families have learned to do different traditions. Absolutely fine. There's no cookie cutter way to do this or not. You want to do what works best for your families, and you want to make sure that your children are safe and healthy and happy. So absolutely, you want to make sure that you are doing things in their best interest, and that's going to help them thrive. And if that means that you don't do Christmas and you do something else another year, or you have a different tradition that may be out of the norm, awesome. You have to do what works for you guys. So I do know that we are just a few minutes away from 1:00, and I appreciate that we were a little bit behind with our tech issues, so I do apologize for that. But I do want to take the last couple minutes to speak to you all about the snack and chats. So this is the last snack chat and keep on track that we will have until the new year. So the next one we'll be having is on January 7th. So just know there'll be a couple weeks of a break, and then we'll get right back into it. For those of you who have suggestions of what to ask, please feel free to reach out to us. If you have topics that you wish that we were covered, or if you felt we didn't cover a topic as much as you liked, absolutely. This is what we're here for. We're here to answer your questions and to discuss and for us to engage with each other. So we will be back on January 7th. And we're going to be having some amazing guest speakers coming in. I don't want to give anything away. We have some awesome guest speakers coming in, answering all of the questions that we need. So last question that I see here: how do we help our family understand our kids' special needs? For us, in our case, it's not necessarily about labeling what the needs are, but how it can manifest itself. So in that case is, my daughter needs to have a quiet place, and we do not force our children to finish their plates. And so when we talk to our families about our children, it's not about, well, they have X, Y, and Z diagnosis. It's more, this is what they need to be successful. And I think that's a very important way to support our children, and also let them, again, to take a bit of that control and have that autonomy over their mental well-being, and listen to them. It doesn't mean they're going to come up and tell you, I'm feeling overwhelmed. You can see it in their body language. You can feel it. My son becomes very anxious in the holidays, and he just doesn't eat. We don't push it. And for my family, I mean, I have an Italian background. They're like, why isn't he eating? And so we've explained that we don't push him. When he gets home, he eats again, and that's completely fine. So I think about just knowing your children and their background. It's very important to respect that, and to respect your children's needs. So if it's close family members, absolutely speaking about the specific diagnosis. But if you're not comfortable with that, or if things are just suspected, or it's a family friend instead, don't feel like you have to answer specific questions or give specific backgrounds or diagnoses. It's more about managing the behavior and the need versus what the label is. Oh yeah, so before we go, if you do have any last minute shopping to do, please consider using our Chapter's Indigo fundraising site. So Adopt for Life received charitable status just recently. It was a lot of hard work for a lot of people. And if you do shop of Indigo's chapter, which I know that I do, feel free to follow the link that's in here. And 15% off any gift cards purchased goes towards our organization, and 3% of any book, gift, or product goes directly to us. And this will help us to continue to develop programs. We're going to be using the funding to continue to support families. And we all know how important the support is, so we would love for you to help support us and get some of your last minute Christmas shopping or holiday shopping off at the same time. So thank you guys so much for listening. I apologize for the tech issues and for my illness. Val, thank you so much for staying on, and I know that I missed having you on as my co-host today, but I really appreciate it. On behalf of all of us here at Adopt for Life, we wish you very happy holidays and a very Merry Christmas, and know that we are here. We are not going anywhere. So if you need support throughout the break, if you need help, if you need resources, if you just need someone to listen to you, this is what we do. So happy holidays, everybody, and we'll see you back on January 7th. Take care.